I'd like to call the meeting to order. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending. Please call the roll.
Gladstone.
Here.
Merrill.
Here.
Kelso.
Here.
Bukai.
Here.
Wally.
Here.
Smith. Don.
Here.
Marshfield.
Here.
Burnout.
Here.
Driscoll.
Here.
Haynes.
Here.
Scott.
Here.
Ellis.
Here.
Faulkner.
Here.
Hinckley.
Here.
Wilson.
Here.
Kosher.
Here.
Layton.
Here.
Sutta.
Here.
Malay.
Here. Please join us in the invocation by Reverend Brett White and pledge to the flag Supervisor Layton.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to be able to gather together today. And Lord, we recognize your goodness and sovereignty and look forward to your presence in this meeting. Thank you for each of the representatives here. Lord, I pray that you would give them wisdom and allow them to make use of the gifts that you have given to them. Help us to honor you in all things. And pray for unity and clarity in everything that is discussed. In your name we pray. Amen.
Please join me in the pledge to the flag. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first on the agenda, approval of last meeting's minutes. Were there any additions or corrections to those minutes? They'll stand as submitted.
All communications have been referred to the respective committees for review.
Okay, privilege of the floor, Supervisor Gladstone.
Thank you, Dean. At this time, I'd like to introduce Director of Emergency Services, Steve Hood. He's going to give a presentation on the first 2 years of the county ambulance service.
Thank you. Doesn't quite seem possible. It seems like we were just up here yesterday talking about the contract for the ambulances and the issues that are being experienced out there. But here we are in our last year of the contract with AMR. We've got 2 years under our belt, so as promised, we put together some numbers, designed a short presentation for you so we can do an assessment and make a decision going forward, an informed decision this time, going forward and see where things are. So I'd like to introduce Maggie Wilson. She's the county EMS coordinator and our deputy director. She's the one that goes through the numbers monthly, looks at basically every single call that the county ambulance does, to decide where to categorize it and that sort of thing. So, presentation's hers, and without further ado, Maggie Wilson. Thank you.
Thank you.
So like Steve said, we're going to look at the county contract, which ended up starting on December 1st of 2022. Everybody remembers back to then, we were experiencing some severe shortages of ambulances, and it was taking 50 minutes to get an ambulance. So the county decided to start the contract early in December. So we're going to look at from December 1st, 2022 to December 31st, 2024. Put together some response contract ambulance over the other town providers for 2023. So this is just a comparison of where the contract ambulance went and then what other ambulances were contracted by that town. So many townships are broken up into different ambulance districts depending on where those lines lie. So it's not by ambulance service provider, but by town instead. Same thing for 2024. Just again, a breakdown of the county ambulance going to mutual aid in the different towns as opposed to the ambulance provider for those towns. The more important number is the patient contact 2024. So the new CAD that we just had installed has made it easier for us to kind of track numbers and look at different categories of things. So by patient contacts in 2024, we mean the number of times that the county contract ambulance went someplace and helped somebody. So whether that was a lift assist or help the ambulance provider move the patient or stabilize the patient until somebody else could get there with the fly card, that's what these numbers are looking at for 2024. So by and large, we've been able to help many people in 2020 with this contract ambulance. So some other things that have come up in conversations that we've talked about is billing reimbursement. So the county contract, the amount that we pay every month is subsidized by what the county, by what AMR, the contract holder, bills for, and that comes off our top. So I just want to explain a little bit about billing reimbursement and government payers. So those gross charges, that's the charge that we would send to somebody if they needed the contract ambulance. So the BLS rate, which is just the ambulance rate, is approximately $1,500. The government sets the rate at which they're going to pay us back at $250. So while the rate that we're charging is $1,500, the government only allows us for Medicaid patients to give back $2,500 or $250, which is far below the cost of providing that service. That number is set, they can't collect any more. That's all that can be collected from that patient as far as reimbursement goes. Your payer mix is what percentage of your population has private insurance that may pay that $1,500, as opposed to what part of your population has government insurance, Medicare, Medicaid. So a large majority of the patients in Delaware County are Medicare, Medicaid. So a large amount of our billing is going to come back at that set government rate where we can't charge that gross rate. The other percentage is a mixture of non-contract insurance, private pays, veterans insurance, and additional insurance types. One big change that we did see in payer mixes from the last presentation to this first 2025, they passed a law that when an ambulance is billed, the money goes directly back to the ambulance company. Before, what would happen is if when they're billing the ambulance, the money might go actually to the person, and then it's their job to turn that check around and send it back in. It makes it very difficult for people to collect money when they are paying the person who the service was provided to on the good faith that that service will pay the ambulance company back. So this has changed, and we can pay the ambulance companies directly. So some other things to look at this billing reimbursement, the net revenue per transport. So in Delaware County in 2023, our net revenue per transport was $482.99. And in 24, it's $597.21. So AMR, the contract holder, as part of the contract, does all of the billing for us and then does all of the collections for us as well. And all of that is included in our contract price. So in 2023, there was only $16,000 remaining of the balance that was left to be collected. That does not include government payers where we can only get the set amount. This is other money that was remaining, but $16,000 from the balance is actually a very good number as far as collection rates go. Some more numbers for you, amount billed since the contract started. So the amount collected when we average it all out is we get reimbursed for about 35% of the total contract costs each year. So in the 2 year and 1 month, we've been billed approximately $2.7 million, and we have collected approximately $1.4 million. This contract does offer local employment opportunities. So the employment breakdown for the ambulance service, 85% of the employees live locally between Delaware and the contiguous counties. They have additional staff that helps to maintain this contract. They have 6 full-time staff members in their dispatch center in addition to the county employee, or in addition to the ambulance employees. And they have 2 full-time mechanics who work out at the Police Fire Station, which is also in Delaware County. They offer a bunch of benefits. I know it looks really small on the screen here, but everybody should have a printout to see that these employees also receive health insurance, retirement, and a bunch of other benefits to their employment. The mileage on the county ambulances, since the start of the contract, the ambulances have a total of 148,714 miles between them. That's quite a bit of mileage from December 1, 2022 to December 31st, 2024. The contract has covered the replacements, the maintenance costs, anything that goes along with maintaining these ambulances, that's all covered. That's not an additional cost to us. Some other no additional cost benefits to the county is new equipment that's available on these ambulances. So AMR has purchased 3 new LifePak 15 monitors. These are the monitors they use them to watch someone's blood pressure, heart rate, EKG rhythm, and vital CO2. And those cost about $32,000 each. And they got 3 new ones for our county contract that didn't increase the cost of our contract. They have a new CPR assist machine, which is about approximately $13,000. And what that does is does compressions and allows for continuous compressions. Studies have shown some improved outcomes with those. Also, because they're such a large agency, they would allow us to join programs and protocols that are offered as a pilot by the Bureau of EMS. So originally, we were enrolled in the ET3 program. I don't know if anybody remembers that from the early numbers. But that was when you could go and treat a patient in their home and release them. That pilot has now ended. But for the entire time that the state offered it, we were a member of it. A new program they're looking to offer from the Bureau of EMS is blood products in the field. So AMR will be eligible for that project, which would allow them to bring blood products to people outside the hospital, which would be huge for patient outcomes. So that would be a great benefit to this contract. Maintenance repair, so all the maintenance repairs on the vehicle is also included in the contract price, as well as the buildings. So the building maintenance, any building repairs, AMR owns those buildings, so they are taxable buildings. All of that is included in that contract price. To this point, we've had no break in service. To maintain equipment, we've had no break in service for any reason. I guess one good example of that is a new fly car was needed at one point during the contract. It was needed in an emergent situation, so they had to take that fly car out of service, get an ambulance to hold us over, and another fly car was back, and all that happened within a couple of hours. So they have the equipment available to replace when things break down when you didn't plan on. So the summary, so the contract with AMR is for countywide ambulance coverage, and has proven to be beneficial to Delaware County and the Delaware County EMS mutual aid plan. It has helped to fill gaps in coverage. It's helped to lower the time between the ambulance being requested and the ambulance arriving on the scene. It gives us access to AMR's vast resources, allows us to enter pilot programs, and have spare equipment on hand. All costs associated with operating this service, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, are covered by the contract costs, allowing us to set budget numbers in our budget and stick with those. We know the worst case scenario number. We might not know what reimbursement is, but we know what the absolute highest number we're gonna have to pay is. So it doesn't matter if something happens to the ambulance or we have to call somebody in on overtime. That doesn't affect our budget numbers. Are there any questions?
With the federal rates being questionable versus federal cut, is the reimbursement rates stressing?
Well, I know as much about the federal cuts as they have released, right, and they promise that it's not going to affect Medicaid and Medicare. I don't know what that looks like on the end. I know it's a big discussion that we had at the last state meeting. What does this federal cuts look like on the Medicaid reimbursement end? I don't think anybody really knows the answer to that.
I think it's a very good presentation. I think it's been very necessary service that's been brought to the county. Given a lot of relief to the volunteers that have been struggling to get help. So I still stand behind what I said originally. We saved one life. It was worth
Well, it helps where some of the volunteers don't have to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning anymore either, so.
What's the average call time?
What do you,
Response.
the
I know it
average is,
used to be up to 45, 50 minutes.
so it changes, I do it every month. I believe the last month was 14.2 minutes. Was for the, but that, I just do the county contract.
Right.
So from the time that they were told to the time that they arrived on scene, the average is 14.2 minutes. Which is
Which is always
a lot better
a lot
than
of
50
improvement, yes.
or
Yeah.
anything else.
Maggie, what are the other volunteer agencies? What's their feedback?
I think originally we did face a lot of opposition in offering a county ambulance service. Most of the volunteer agencies do utilize the service to help to fill their coverage gaps. And I think it has been very helpful in that way. I've actually seen it just from me looking at CADs and looking at numbers, a little bit of an increase in volunteer response in the times that they're available. Is that there is a county contract off of them.
Currently, how many ambulances are in service?
For the county contract, 2 ambulances, 2 BLS ambulances and a fly car. One is stationed in Camden, one is stationed in Pinder's Corners, and the fly car is at Camden. That's a paramedic only vehicle. It does paramedic assists to lower level ambulances.
Moving forward, do you feel 2 ambulances and a fly car is sufficient to meet this demand?
I feel that Delaware County is a very large county, and unfortunately, we don't get reimbursed for readiness. So standing ready to answer the calls, we could benefit from an additional ambulance to be able to strategically locate them a little bit better. But the ambulances that we have, the fly car that we have has made a huge difference.
Any other questions?
Maggie, is the plan to bid out again this year before the end of the year?
The plan was for me to present today
Yeah.
and to see what your guidance is going forward. If we want to look at the contract and look for contract extensions options, or if we want to go another route.
When it was proposed, what was the amount of reimbursement? I see here that it's 35% of the total contract. When this was proposed, what was the total reimbursement percentage that was floated? I don't remember.
About 30%.
Was it?
Yeah, so we're right on track with what we thought we would get. And across the board, if you look at that payer mix, and they're only paying about a third of what they're billing, it makes sense that we only are recovering about a third.
Is it fair to say, and I'm just thinking, is it fair to say if we add an ambulance, it would be about $500,000 more?
Well, we actually have somebody from AMR here. Could they answer that question for you?
Well, sure.
Yeah, I mean, I
Oh,
can try to
oh.
answer the question. So, yes, I'm Bill here, I'm the regional director for AMR in central New York. It'd probably be in the $500,000
Yeah.
range. Sure. Another full-time,
I think you're doing a very good job myself. But
appreciate that.
I right in the middle of seeing ambulances going every which way and so.
And again, our biggest challenge is the federal reimbursement. We're not so concerned about this sort of cuts, but it doesn't pay for the trip costs for sure.
It's just a big county to station 2 ambulances and keep them so they're good money.
Yeah, resource management, if you had a third, it's good that you're at. To make that 14 number even better.
It was, when we discussed this, particularly at the COVID committee meeting, that, if we start this, more than likely we're gonna continue it. That's what my thought was anyways, because once you take a service like this, once you start a service like this, oh boy, it will be continued, or they're, I think the populace would not be happy. So, as a member of the fire district that responds to calls, used to respond at 3 o'clock in the morning, I am very grateful that we did this. As I know, talking with a number of other people in the fire service, that we absolutely made the right decision when we did this. So,
Maggie, I was a little surprised that, because I see them going everywhere, that there was only 164, I guess. Oh, no, that's Walton. Oh, I forget what I'm gonna say.
Okay.
No, you didn't total the column, so.
So have the 2 ambulances and White Arm been able to keep up with the calls?
We've had a couple of times where we have run out of county ambulances that were left, but another ambulance was available to step in and fill that gap. So again, they're just participating in the mutual aid plan, and sometimes everybody calls the ambulance at once. And so we've had a couple of times, it's not regular. It's the additional 30 ambulance would be more about decreasing the time, strategically located.
Is there not any other company that would be interested in bidding on this?
So originally, how we did the RFP and we released it to any company with a CON that encompassed all of Delaware County. And there was 2 companies that had that. And
But one was kind of late to the game of the ambulance, I think is what you're referring to. I mean, is there a reason we wouldn't put it out for bid? Because I know some things have changed with Stanford being on board right now, and the ambulance has helped out, I guess, quite a bit involved. Is there a reason we wouldn't put it out for the bid?
I can't answer that for you. I mean, I could tell you pros and cons of putting something out to bid, but.
there's discussion in the public safety committee on how we're gonna move this forward, right?
Yeah, there will be a discussion. There's 2 options, either RFP or contract extension. My personal opinion right at the moment with the performance that's been shown and proven, a contract extension, in my opinion, is the way to go. I'm not saying it's wrong to put out an RFP either, but we don't want to jeopardize the performance either, because it's a critical component in this whole program. Certainly.
But that'll come out of your committee,
But
the
that would be
recommendation,
committee, I'm
right?
just throwing out my-
I just have a question. You said that it's 14, the response time is 14 minutes?
14.2 minutes is the average.
Okay.
So
And
of all of the different, so in some areas, it might take them 7 minutes to get there. And another area, it might take that 40 minutes, just where it's located and where the call is.
is that number skewed at all because of the majority of the calls are in Delhi? Because of close proximity, or?
I'm sure that would factor into how that number is calculated for the average response time. Or we're looking at that average response time in relation to what the average response time, that number that we were using before was. So
Which was,
about 15 minutes.
and that was for,
That was for when you factored everything all in together.
okay, but that was not AMR, that was the individual.
That was before we
Districts?
had a contract.
Okay, so
And we
the
were relying
individual,
heavily on mutual aid.
okay, so it was the volunteer districts, basically. I mean, there were a couple of paid, but that
So
was,
there was, Margaret Hospital was paid before the contract ambulance. Margaret Hospital was paid, Sydney was paid, and Hancock was paid.
okay. So it's I just want to make sure I understand that it's the call that goes for any ambulance. Into 911, say someone calls for an ambulance prior to the AMR contract.
Prior to our contract.
So
So
it was,
those were the numbers that we were looking at.
okay,
By the time we got done toning, so we tone the ambulance, so the ambulance, the call comes into the 911 center. From the 911 center, we figure out what district it's in, notify the ambulance having authority jurisdiction to have. That ambulance got a certain number of tones before we moved on to a mutual aid to another ambulance, before we moved on to mutual aid to another ambulance, before we moved on to another ambulance, and before we moved out of the county and tried count of ambulances that were outside the county to come back in and try to fill before we tried the paid ambulance services that were in the county. So we would get all the way, in some instances, from the town of Harpersfield to Hancock, looking for an ambulance.
Okay, so that
We
was,
don't see that anymore.
okay, so, and this is the
Well,
14,
we haven't, goodness.
and the 14 is just AMR?
It's just AMR, yeah. Those are the ones that I read every month and kind of put together to see the performance of the contracts.
Maggie, out of the total number going to Delhi, how many respond to SUNY Delhi campus?
I don't know that number off the top of my head, how many responses were to Delta campus,
Do you know how many respond to the nursing home?
off the top of my head.
The
I
majority.
can pull that for you, if that's something you need.
Be curious to see with the new reimbursement rate being 20% higher than they were last year, what that would look like as far as budgeting purposes. It seems like if the reimbursement rates are higher, obviously there'd be, I guess, you'd be more profitable to do that. I'm assuming. But,
I don't think that it's ever really considered profitable to do 911 services with an ambulance.
but didn't you say that the majority of the calls were Medicare and Medicaid?
Medicare and Medicaid, and they're at about a third of what it costs to actually go do that ambulance call. So when you think about the states of readiness, again, that you are reimbursed for, the fuel mileage, the personnel that you put on, the supplies that you used, you're not making your money back. And that's the
But
number.
it's still reducing your loss, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it reduces your loss, yeah. But the 911 service is very difficult to make any profit in with an ambulance service. That's why you see that they are subsidized in most places. An ambulance is dedicated for 911 service is subsidized, or the ambulance subsidizes itself by doing an facility transport.
I'm just curious what would be the main disadvantage as far as if we were to put the pros and cons, what in your estimation? What would be the pros and cons, or I guess the cons, I guess we know what the pros
The cons of putting it out to bid,
would be. Yeah.
at this point, when we put it out to bid, we know what everybody knows what everybody else's numbers were the last time. So you're gonna put it out to bid to the same two. Are we gonna see higher numbers?
I don't know, but last time, from my understanding, the ambulance came in and they did kind of a quick proposal. And I was at a meeting one time, I think you were with me there, and they had commented the ambulance that they're gonna, if it was structured differently, that they could get better comparable coverage. Little to no cost to the county. That's correct.
I mean, I don't know how ambulance is structured, but every ambulance reimbursement is set. So it doesn't matter what your payer mix is, or, you're still gonna get that same, nobody's getting more.
I think he was more saying that if it were, the RFP was actually put out slightly different, they had adjusted the rate. I think that, I just remember we asked a question in mental health, and they kind of looked at one another and said we could have provided comparable coverage for little to no cost in the county, so that's.
I don't see how anybody's gonna
I-
guarantee something
but I-
without.
I'm not in that business.
The risk you run by releasing the RFP again is increasing your contract costs exponentially. Right now, if you were able to renegotiate the contract with AMR, you could probably keep your contract prices down, because you may see it increase at the same percentage you've been paying over the last 2 years. Those percentage increases, you may be able to negotiate that in. Whereas if you just up and release a new RFP, they're going to look at it, you may, instead of starting out at 1.9, like we did with the AMR contract, we're 4 or 5 years later here, you may be looking at 3.5 or something along those lines.
But if I remember right, one of the things we had said from the very start was to gather data so that we knew going forward. And now that we have the data, I guess, without doing anything different, I guess, at least now you have some sort of numbers to actually look at, so forth, so someone could actually
Make a better, more thorough decision. Hypothetically, and I'm gonna need your help here, Glenn, if I missed anything. Glenn and I met with some mayors and some supervisors Westchester Medical. Apparently, Westchester and Margaretville hospitals have trouble staffing both ambulances. So far, they haven't needed our service, the county service that I'm aware of. If at the point in time there is a need to cover Middletown or Margaretville or the eastern side of the county more, is that what it would take to raise 30?
You would
So, is that
Yeah,
right?
I would think that in either direction, whether it's extension or if it's a, a new bid RFP, that we would want to understand whether it's the Margaretville area or any other part of the county where, there may be a situation, a change going forward where there would be a benefit of having a third ambulance. We should understand what those numbers are in either scenario.
Yeah, and I don't know if the 30 ambulance was, do you know, Bill, the 30 ambulance was something we could negotiate in the contract, the existing contract?
I'm not sure it's, it predates me. I wasn't involved
In the original negotiation, so.
Well, can I ask a question? If we go forward in the committee, and that could be a option in the contract, either whether it's an extension or a RFP, can AMR provide a third if we so choose to go that route? You can do that.
From a physical.
Correct. Well, from an operations.
Operational standpoint.
Yeah, okay. I kind of thought so, I just need to.
If the county chose to go to a third ambulance, it's probably hard to say what the time frame it would be. Say, like, hey, we need a third ambulance, what time frame needs staff wants to do. Ready to go.
Probably 30 to 45 days.
I would put it really.
Absolutely, yes, that's the easy.
Yeah, I mean, if hypothetically speaking, Margaretville ambulance, got closed by Westchester Medical Center, there would be some painful days for the county ambulance because they would be probably posted somewhere where there's no garage. They would have to, until we could bring on that third ambulance or how we negotiated that. But we would certainly be able to cover it with the resources we have right now. For the time frame until to bring that third ambulance on board.
You say that, Steve, but your third bullet on the PowerPoint, I tallied it up. There was 2,236 AMR ambulance calls for the year. 186 a month. That's 6 a day. That's going pretty flat out every day.
That's exactly what we were projecting. Was between 5 and 7.
So I don't know how you can take much more, but that's what it's working out to be now.
It would be
6
very
calls a day.
tight to lose an ambulance service.
Yeah.
What's that?
It would be very tight on the resources to lose an ambulance service, especially an ambulance service that's busy.
Have any of the other towns, like Stanford, for example, if they increase their capacity at all?
They offer one ambulance, give them usually coverage for the town of Stanford, town of Harpsville, town of Oregon.
So am I taking it right that if we set a contract expectation that we are further ahead to go ahead and financially be to our advantage to just give it to AMR than to put it out to bid?
I think we'd have to look at those numbers. I mean, just because, and Amy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, just because you put an RFP out doesn't mean you have to accept any of the responses, correct?
Right.
Right.
You're looking at me. I'm like-
He did say Amy.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear that either. Correct.
So we can certainly look at that, and see which way we would be further ahead. You know, AMR has a proven track record with us now for 3 years. You know, we'll see if, you know, what the numbers look like on a renegotiated contract versus what they may look like on a rebid contract.
How much do you like being here?
Put a bill on that. He's the local guy.
My name is Bill Beavers. I'm the operations manager for the local Loniana operation, and we value our partnership with the county very much. The crews are very happy. They generally get to stay in the station and work and respond out. They like doing 911 work. So we like being here very much.
So that could very well reflect on your financial expectation from us.
Correct.
Like a 10% reduction in cost.
See, that's why I get to refer back to my boss. Yeah, no, we do very much value our partnership, and that's really what we look at it as a partnership with the county. We interact with a lot of volunteer agencies every day, whether it's the fly car or the ambulances, and it's always been a very good, very professional working relationship, and again, we do value that.
And I certainly want to thank you two gentlemen, as chair of the Public Safety Committee, for fulfilling your obligations to the county. That's very critical.
Well, I think at the very least, this whole operation has proved that it was very necessary and it was a wise decision to do it in the first place. Now I think the Public Safety Committee has some homework to do. So, come back to us with a recommendation.
So I've got a scenario I'd like to address. Of course, you all know that town of Hancock, our taxpayers pay $300,000 a year for our ambulance service, which is excellent. Revolting about this simply because that would be another added tax for them. You know, the tax they pay now plus the county tax for the ambulance service. So if they decide they don't want to fund that anymore, we're going to have 6 or 7 people lose a job. Plus, you're going to add all those calls onto this. You're going to have a third ambulance. I don't know how you can get by without it because we have so many calls down there that we're taking care of. So you'd be adding a third ambulance in, and your response time, it's like Amy brought up, it's very low because a lot of the calls are in Delhi and Davenport, where Hancock is 45 minutes from here. So that's going to increase. That is why we went with our paid service in the beginning, because way back then we had to rely on ambulances from Cooperstown to come down. You know, that's an hour it takes to get down there. And quite frankly, an hour, well, even less than that means the difference between life and death. So I'm not knocking AMR at all. I think they're doing a great job. But I'm going to have to answer to my taxpayers when they say, why do we have to pay for another ambulance service that we don't need? So those costs are, like I said, you're going to have to add a third ambulance, and we're going to have 5 or 6 people lose their jobs for a service that, quite frankly, we don't need. Because we have our own service, and we have 3 ambulances down there. And our response time to calls are minutes, you know. So what would take 45 minutes to an hour for an ambulance to get to Hancock, we're right there, you know, in 5 or 10 minutes. So it's quite a savings in time. So like I said, I'm not against this at all, but I just have these questions that my constituents have raised, and I think they're very good questions.
So the county ambulance was brought in as a backup service. So your constituents are paying for the same service that all the other constituents in the county are paying for, and that's for it to be a backup service in the case that their home service isn't available.
Well,
But you've never used it, have you?
Yes, they do.
and the same thing goes for the people in deposit.
Yeah, deposit never uses
They don't
it.
use it at all. And yet they're gonna have to
Deposit
pay
has
for it.
used Hancock though, because Eastern Broome doesn't always have a paramedic on board, so they have
Right,
sometimes
right,
had to call in Hancock.
Yeah.
But I guess I can say to that, something could happen with your ambulance service that's occurring right currently with Middletown and Andes and Roxbury. Now you've got a backup. You've got a backup service if something goes wrong.
Well, you raise a good point, but we have 3 ambulances too.
But
So
the
if one
county
ambulance
has
goes down,
gone
it's
into the
still in.
town of Hancock.
Hmm?
They have responded and gone into the town of Hancock.
Oh, yeah, it's very few times.
Very few times, but they do back up Hancock. You have 3 ambulances. We also, the main problem is usually the trust is how much staff do you have? When is your staff available?
We always have staff available. We never missed a call because of the lack of staff. We pay the staff, and then we have volunteers. If we need a second ambulance, we have volunteers that cover that.
You know, it's funny, because every call that I've ever been on, thank you for showing up in this amount of time. Take that time and extend it, and it's, well, what took you so long? So I would think that the people of the Hancock and the people of Middletown are very grateful that they have those ambulances there to show up in that short of a time. So, if you weigh that on the, for lack of a better word, double taxation, I think the majority of the people that have used that ambulance would say, I don't care. I'm just glad somebody came and picked me up.
Yeah.
So, and I don't want to diminish your point at all, but, a lot of people say, why are we paying for this? Until you make that call, when you need it, it's a little different story.
Yeah. Well, that's what I need. I need answers to these questions that I'm asked.
No, I get it, but it's just.
You know what might be an interesting, just an exercise is assuming there was no local ambulance services in the county, and what would it take and what would it cost for a contracted service? How would that look if all the other services hypothetically were to go away? And that will help
Didn't you?
kind of
So we did
Yeah, I
that.
think you did.
help justify or raise more questions as to, kind of to your question, Jerry, I think.
Glenn?
Yes.
I think it
Emergency
was-
Services did
Okay.
a rough
I
scenario.
think it was
Exactly.
6 ambulances is what we figured.
So roughly double the cost, plus or minus.
They all are.
Because they were ALS ambulances.
Right.
It wasn't good enough.
And you would have to increase ALS as well.
That's correct. And
So it
that's,
wouldn't be 6 BLS ambulances, it would need to be some kind of combination.
we need to we could either do a combination, you could put an ALS provider on each ambulance and then significantly increase the cost of each ambulance. Currently, we're lucky because we do have ALS available in this county, outside of just the county fly car. But even then, there's more days, I would say, we run out of ALS more often than we run out of ambulances. But the nice part is that somebody went there and helped the person and brought them to the hospital. So that's the benefit of our BLS ambulances. They can go get somebody and transport them to the hospital.
As well as critical access hospitals.
Okay, any other questions?
Well, I have one. Steve or Maggie, how important, or EMR, how important is that fly car?
Very important.
Oh, is an ambulance more important than a fly car?
Well, the fly car provides the service that the ambulance can't, and it touches more agencies. Take Andes, for example. Andes usually crews their ambulance. They need an ALS provider. And we can start the county fly car in their direction
Okay.
to provide ALS. And that's another service that AMR is offering us. And we get, so we're paid for one paramedic instead of a paramedic on each one of the ambulances. So.
Yeah.
Just the one paramedic in the fly car worked out.
We could, you could always use more ALS. And some of the ambulances aren't ALS, some of the paid ambulances sometimes aren't ALS. So we're sending the fly car to agencies that are paid already. to assist.
So when we're hypothetically talking about a third ambulance, should we maybe be talking about a second fly car?
To go along with your third ambulance,
Right, or just the second fly car, no third.
I don't think a second fly car would cover the same benefit as the
Okay.
ambulance.
Of all your employees that work for the Delaware County Ambulance Service that started out BLS, how many have upgraded to ALS? And well, furthermore, do you provide that funding for that education for that?
100% of the fund.
Okay, yeah. Do you know how many? But there has been some.
Oh, yes.
Okay,
Oh, yeah,
that-
definitely. And I just don't want to give you a number.
Right.
But yes.
And it's available to any of the BLS
Yes, we.
providers that would like to upgrade, correct?
We strongly encourage it, and we have affiliations with the local paramedic programs, and we sponsor our BLS providers through paramedic, and we pay 100% of the cost of their training.
Which you don't see that in this contract. So that's just I just wanted to throw that in there. That's all.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, next, are there any standing committee reports? Okay, we'll move on to resolutions. The first resolution is number 62.
I bring a resolution up and ask for its adoption.
Second.
2025 budget amendment, acceptance of funds from New York Department of State for the statewide investment in more swims program, planning department.
Questions on this resolution? Please call the roll.
Gladstone. Gladstone.
Yes.
Merrill.
Yes.
Kelso.
Yes.
Sakai.
Yes.
Wally.
Yes.
Smith. Marshfield. Colonel.
Yes.
Driscoll.
Yes.
Haynes.
Yes.
Scott. Alice.
Yes.
Faulkner.
Yes.
Hinckley.
Yes.
Wilson.
Yes.
Kosher.
Yes.
Clayton.
Yes.
Sutta.
Yes.
Malay.
Yes. Okay, resolution number 63.
Here we go again. I'll move this and ask the board to approve it.
I'll second.
Joe, is this for February?
Yes.
2025 budget
And
amendment.
if I may add, we have no status on this situation, so we don't know how long it's gonna last. As discussed, I think the last two board meetings with this same.
The reality of it is it could get worse before it gets better.
Correct.
Seems to
Are you
me just
reading
a bit unreasonable that we're asked to cover up, not
Yeah.
surprised, but we're asked to cover a cost that really don't have any
No control over
say,
it.
control, or even understanding of
No.
what goes into it to know whether we're, I mean, is there a metric that we know that that person's really there that many days, or that got that amount of service? It's just, we just get a, kind of
Just
get
get a
an
bill.
invoice and.
We know they're there.
Yeah.
The service that they're getting, we don't know. We don't know when they're getting evaluated. Sometimes they're there for days and weeks and months before they're even evaluated. Because there's other things that are more pressing than our people. So
And we know what they're charging us a day
we know what they charge us a day for
because
each
of the
person,
region.
but that's the limit almost of what we know. They're there, this is how much it is a day. We don't know the status, where they are in the process, when an anticipated end is, we don't know any of that.
Glenn, there's a feeling that we've talked about in committee that doesn't really feel like there's an incentive for that hospital to move forward with this. And again, this is, it used to be 50% shared by the state, not anymore. Changed that, what was it, a couple of years ago? Right? Yeah.
2 or 3 years.
So now it's 100% on the counties, so.
And we had many years where we had no expense whatsoever.
Oh, thank you, I just,
Yeah, so
It's
it's
stuck
it's
between a rock and a hard
frustrating.
spot.
It's like a paltry $1,600 a day.
First or second?
At all.
Is there
Times
first or
two.
second?
Times two,
Right.
that's per each.
And Joe.
Okay,
And you said it wasn't all the way, so.
okay.
Okay, please call the roll.
Gladstone,
yeah,
Merrill,
Yes,
Kelso,
yeah,
Bukai,
Yes.
Wally,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Marshfield,
Yes.
Vernal,
Yes.
Driscoll,
Yes.
Haynes,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Ellis,
Yes.
Faulkner,
yes,
Hinckley,
Yes.
Wilson,
Yes.
Kosher,
yes,
Layton,
yes,
Seta,
Yes.
Malay,
Yes. Resolution number 64.
I bring this resolution up and ask for its adoption.
authorization for awards, Department of Planning, Parks, and Watershed Affairs.
Questions on
So,
this?
so this says they're charging about $10 per
Parcel?
parcel. That's a good deal.
Shelley's shaking her head yes.
Yeah, it is, it is. But the other bids just slightly more than that. That's very
Yeah, we had
reasonable.
quite a-
Of course, they're probably all in Sydney,
We had quite
quite a few.
we had 5 bids. There's
Operate
quite a,
from one to the
quite a
next.
range from 1 to 5.
But still, I thought that was a reasonable price.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, any questions? Please call the roll.
Gladstone,
yes,
Merrill,
yes,
Kelso,
yes,
Bukai,
Yes.
Wally,
Yes.
Smith, Marshfield,
Yes.
Vernal,
Yes.
Driscoll,
Yes.
Haynes,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Ellis,
Yes.
Faulkner,
yes,
Hinckley,
Yes.
Wilson,
yes,
Kosher,
yes,
Layton,
Yes.
Seta,
Yes.
Malay,
Yes. Resolution number 65.
we bring this resolution up, move for its adoption.
Second.
correction of current tax rolls in accordance with section 554 of the real property tax law.
What place is that?
Questions? Please call the roll.
What property is this?
It's actually close to the border. And
31-1-4.
Yeah, oh, thank you. I got it.
Gladstone, Kelso,
yes,
Bukai,
Yes.
Wally,
Yes.
Smith,
yes.
Marshfield, Vernal,
Yes.
Driscoll,
Yes.
Haynes,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Ellis,
Yes.
Faulkner,
yes,
Hinckley,
Yes.
Wilson,
Yeah.
Kosher,
yes,
Layton,
yeah,
Seta,
Yes.
Malay,
Yes. Okay, we have 2 not pre-filed resolutions. I'll waive Rule 10 without objection. Resolution number 66.
I bring this one up and move for its adoption.
Second.
National Public Health Week, April 7th through April 13th, 2025.
This is a voice vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. And resolution number 67.
I bring this one up and move for its adoption.
Legislative approval for continuation of sales tax levy.
Okay, this is another voice vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. And the last resolution, number 68.
I bring this one up and move for its adoption.
Payment of audit.
There you go.
Please call the roll.
Gladstone,
yes,
Merrill,
Yes,
Kelso,
yes,
Bukai,
Yes.
Wally,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Marshfield,
Yes.
Vernal,
Yeah.
Driscoll,
Yes.
Haynes,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Ellis,
Yes.
Faulkner,
yes,
Hinckley,
Yes.
Wilson,
Yes.
Kosher,
yes,
Layton,
Yes.
Seta,
Yes.
Malay,
Yes. Okay,
I'd like to make a motion to go in executive session to discuss personnel.
and ask Shelley
And
Johnson.
ask Kelly to stay.
There's a second?
A
I
second.
did it.
All in favor?
Aye.
So